I thought I had the perfect marriage. I thought I was the lucky one. But my entire reality shattered in exactly 5 seconds in a hotel bar. A gorgeous woman, a complete stranger, sat down next to me, looked me dead in the eye, and said 6 words that would change my life forever. Your wife is dating my husband. Most people would scream or cry. But us. We decided to do something much, much worse. We didn't just get mad, we got even. Welcome back to Inspiration Seeker. If you love stories about instant karma and uncovering the truth, you are in the right place. Before we dive into this story of betrayal and the ultimate payback, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and comment Team Revenge down below if you think cheaters deserve exactly what's coming to them. Trust me, you don't want to miss the ending of this one. It was a rainy Tuesday night in Manhattan, the kind of weather that makes the city look blurred and gray. I was sitting alone at the champagne bar in the Plaza Hotel, nursing a scotch and checking my watch for the 10th time. My wife, Sarah, had texted me an hour ago saying she was swamped at the law firm and would be late for our anniversary dinner. Again. I wasn't suspicious. I was just disappointed. I was the understanding husband, the architect who patiently waited while his ambitious wife climbed the corporate ladder. I told myself that her hard work was for us, for our future. I was scrolling through news on my phone, trying to distract myself from the empty chair across from me, when the atmosphere in the room seemed to shift. A woman sat down on the bar stool directly next to me. You couldn't miss her. She was stunning, elegance personified. She was wearing a tailored black dress that probably cost more than my first car, and she carried herself with a kind of cold, regal confidence. She signaled the bartender for a dirty martini without even looking at the menu. I shifted slightly to give her space, expecting her to ignore me. People like her usually kept to themselves. But she didn't turn away. Instead, she swiveled her chair to face me completely. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and filled with a strange mix of pity and determination. You must be Ethan, she said. Her voice was calm, smooth, and undeniably American upper class. I blinked, startled. I am. Do we know each other? She took a slow sip of her martini, never breaking eye contact. No, we haven't met. My name is Veronica. And I think you're waiting for Sarah. My stomach dropped. Was there an accident? Was she a doctor? Is she okay? Did something happen? Veronica set her glass down on the marble counter with a soft clink. Physically, she's fine, Ethan. But she isn't at her office. She's currently at Giovanni's, that Italian place 2 blocks over. And she isn't working on a case. She's holding hands with my husband, Brad. The noise of the bar seemed to vanish. I felt the blood drain from my face. I tried to laugh it off, a nervous, dry chuckle. Look, lady, I don't know who you are, but my wife is loyal. She's working late. You have the wrong guy. Veronica didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She just reached into her designer purse and pulled out her phone. I wish I had the wrong guy, Ethan. I really do. But denial won't change the facts. She slid the phone across the bar toward me. The screen was bright, and the image was crystal clear. It was a photo taken through a restaurant window just 20 minutes ago. It was Sarah, undeniably her, laughing with her head thrown back, her hand resting intimately on the cheek of a man I had never seen before. That was the moment the old Ethan died. And the plan began. I stared at that screen until my vision blurred. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. That was my Sarah. That was the woman I kissed goodbye this morning, the woman I had built a home with. And she was looking at this stranger, this Brad, with a look of adoration I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall. I wanted to run 2 blocks over to Giovanni's and flip their table. But Veronica placed a perfectly manicured hand on my arm. Her touch was light but firm, grounding me. Don't look away, Ethan, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. You need to see the rest. You need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Ignorance is not bliss. It's a liability. She took the phone back and opened a hidden folder. It wasn't just one photo. It was an archive. It was a meticulous collection of betrayal. She started scrolling, and with every swipe, another piece of my life turned into a lie. There were screenshots of text messages. I saw texts from nights when Sarah claimed she was buried in paperwork. "He's finally asleep. Wish I was with you," she had written to him. "Just endure it a little longer, baby. Once the bonus comes in, we can plan the weekend," Brad had replied. There were receipts for hotel rooms in Soho and the Upper East Side, dates that matched perfectly with her so-called client meetings. There were flight itineraries for a conference in Miami last month. I remembered driving her to JFK Airport, kissing her forehead, and telling her to knock him dead. Looking at the photos now, I saw her and Brad on a yacht in South Beach, holding champagne flutes. I felt sick. Physically ill. The betrayal wasn't just sexual. It was the humiliation. They were laughing at us. They were living a double life on our dime and our time. How? My voice cracked, and I had to clear my throat. "How long have you known? How did you get all this?" "I've suspected for 3 months," Veronica replied, locking her phone and placing it face down on the bar. "I hired a PI 3 weeks ago. Brad isn't as smart as he thinks he is. He leaves a digital trail everywhere he goes." I looked at her. She wasn't crying. Her mascara wasn't running. She sat there with the posture of a queen and the coldness of an executioner. "Why aren't you screaming?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Why aren't you destroying his life right now?" Veronica turned to me, and a small, dangerous smile played on her lips. "Oh, I plan to, Ethan. But I don't want to just cause a scene. A scene is temporary. I want total destruction. And I can't do it alone. I need you." My knuckles were white as I gripped the edge of the bar. The anger was boiling over, hot and blinding. "I'm going over there," I growled, pushing my chair back. "I'm going to walk into that restaurant, flip their table, and let the whole world know exactly what kind of people they are." Veronica didn't grab me. She didn't panic. She just said 2 words, sharp as a whip. "Sit down." I froze. There was an authority in her voice that made me pause. "Think, Ethan," she hissed, leaning in closer so only I could hear. "If you walk in there now, screaming and throwing punches, you lose. You become the crazy, jealous husband. Sarah will play the victim. Brad will call the cops. They'll spin the narrative, and by tomorrow morning, you will be the bad guy, and they will be the tragic lovers driven together by an unstable spouse." Her words hit me like a bucket of ice water. She was absolutely right. Sarah was a lawyer. She knew how to twist facts. If I exploded now, I would lose my leverage. Slowly, painfully, I sank back onto the stool. "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Just let them get away with it." "No," Veronica whispered, her eyes gleaming with a terrifying intelligence. "We let them think they're getting away with it. We wait. We gather ammunition. And when the timing is perfect, we drop the hammer so hard they never recover." We ordered another round of drinks. For the next hour, the fancy hotel bar became our war room. We didn't talk about the weather or sports. We compared notes on our lives. I learned that Brad was a failed entrepreneur before Veronica used her family inheritance to fund his first venture. I told her how I worked 2 jobs to support Sarah through law school, paying the bills while she studied late into the night. We realized something sickening. We were the stepping stones. They used us to get where they were. We were the safe, reliable partners who built their foundations, and now that they felt successful, they were looking for something new and exciting. That shared realization forged a bond between us stronger than steel. We weren't just strangers anymore. We were allies in a war they didn't even know had started. "Here is the deal," Veronica said, raising her glass for a toast. We act normal. We play the happy spouses. We don't file for divorce yet. We wait for the Hamptons party next month. That is where we end them. I looked at this stranger who suddenly felt like the only person in the world I could trust. I clinked my glass against hers. Deal. But as I paid the tab, the reality set in. Walking out of that hotel and going home to face a lying wife? That was going to be the hardest acting performance of my life. Walking through the front door of my own apartment felt like stepping onto a stage. The sanctuary I had built with Sarah now felt like a trap. I sat on the couch in the dark, my heart pounding against my ribs like a sledgehammer, waiting for the sound of her key in the lock. It happened at 11:45 p.m. She breezed in, looking disheveled in a way that she tried to pass off as work stress. She smelled faintly of expensive red wine and strong mints, obviously used to cover the alcohol. God, I am absolutely exhausted, she sighed, kicking off her heels and giving me a tired, practiced smile. The partners just wouldn't let up. I'm so sorry I missed dinner, babe. How was your night? A day ago, I would have offered her a foot rub and warmed up some leftovers. Today, it took every ounce of willpower not to vomit. I forced a smile. It felt stiff on my face, like a mask that didn't quite fit. It's okay, Sarah. I know how important this case is. I just had a quiet night. You're the best, she said, pecking me on the cheek. Her lips felt cold. I'm going to hop in the shower. As soon as the bathroom door clicked shut and the water started running, the act dropped. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. A secure messaging app, downloaded on Veronica's instructions, blinked with a notification. Veronica, Brad just walked in. He says traffic was a nightmare. Stick to the script. Me. She's in the shower washing off the scent of the restaurant. I feel sick looking at her. Veronica, focus on the endgame, Ethan. Check the joint accounts tonight. She was right. While Sarah was washing away the evidence of her date, I opened my laptop. I quietly started moving my personal inheritance and savings into a separate, secure holding account Veronica had recommended. I changed passwords on my email. I contacted an old law school buddy of mine under the guise of asking for hypothetical advice about asset protection. Over the next few weeks, the house became a battlefield of silence. I started noticing things I was blind to before. The way she guarded her phone like it was the nuclear launch codes. The way she flipped the screen down instantly when I walked into the room. The way she gaslit me when I asked simple questions. Why are you so curious about my schedule lately, Ethan? Do you not trust me? She would ask, playing the victim perfectly, her eyes wide and innocent. I used to think she was just stressed. Now I saw it for what it was. Pure manipulation. But I swallowed my pride. I played the role of the doting, naive husband. I cooked dinner, I asked about her day, and I smiled. All while counting down the days to the Hamptons. The trap was set, and the bait was irresistible. Veronica had played Brad like a fiddle. She texted me the details of their conversation, and it was almost laughable how easily his ego took over. She had suggested a massive summer blowout at their estate in the Hamptons to celebrate their 10th anniversary. She told him, Brad, we need to show the world we are still a power couple. Invite everyone. Invite your business associates. Let's make a statement. Brad, arrogant as ever, saw this as the perfect cover. He didn't just agree, he insisted on inviting a specific legal consultant he was working with. 2 days later, Sarah walked into the kitchen holding a thick, cream-colored envelope embossed with gold leaf. She looked excited, too excited. Babe, look at this, she exclaimed, waving the invitation. You know that high-profile investor I've been trying to land? Brad Sterling? He and his wife are throwing a huge anniversary party in the Hamptons next weekend, and we made the guest list. I looked at the invitation. Mr. and Mrs. Bradley Sterling invite you to celebrate 10 years of love. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Wow, I said, leaning against the counter and playing the supportive husband role. That's a big deal, Sarah. But isn't that a bit personal? I mean, an anniversary party for a client. She didn't even blink. Oh, it's totally a networking thing, Ethan. Half of Wall Street will be there. It's strictly business for me, but I need you there to be my arm candy. Plus, it's a free weekend in a Hamptons mansion. Who says no to that? It was terrifying how easily the lies rolled off her tongue. She wasn't just inviting me to a party, she was bringing her husband to meet her lover, thinking I was too stupid to notice. She thought she was managing the situation, keeping her two worlds colliding in a controlled environment. She had no idea that the wife she was going to visit was plotting her demise, and the husband she was dragging along was holding the match. Well, if it helps your career, I'm in, I said, forcing a smile. I'll pack my best suit. Sarah hugged me, clearly relieved. You're the best. I promise, I'll make it up to you. As she walked away to text Brad the good news, I looked at the invitation again. It wasn't an invitation to a party. It was a summons to their execution. We were going to the Hamptons, and only one couple was coming back intact. The week leading up to the Hamptons was agonizingly slow. While Sarah was busy picking out outfits to impress her colleagues, I was meeting Veronica in the back corner of a dim coffee shop in Brooklyn. We weren't alone. Sitting across from us was Kowalski, the private investigator Veronica had hired. He looked exactly like you'd expect. Tired eyes, a rumpled jacket, and an expression that said he'd seen the worst of humanity. He slid a heavy manila envelope across the table. You got two problems here, Kowalski grunted. The first one is moral. The second one is criminal. We opened the envelope. The photos were there, of course, high-definition shots of Brad and Sarah entering hotels, kissing in parks, the usual sleaze. But that wasn't what Kowalski was pointing at. He tapped a stack of financial spreadsheets. Brad isn't just cheating on you, Mrs. Sterling, Kowalski said to Veronica. He's stealing from you. My blood ran cold as we scanned the documents. Brad had been funneling money out of Veronica's company accounts. He was listing them as consulting fees and client retention expenses. And guess who the recipient was? A shell company that traced directly back to a bank account, in Sarah's name. There it was. The Cartier bracelet Sarah told me she bought with her bonus? Paid for by Veronica's company. The weekend trips? Expensed as business travel. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just a fling anymore. Sarah wasn't just a cheater, she was an accomplice to embezzlement. She was knowingly accepting stolen funds. This changed everything. We weren't just looking at a divorce case anymore, we were looking at potential felony charges. Veronica stared at the papers, her face unreadable. Then, she looked up at me, and her eyes were hard as diamonds. Well, Ethan, she said, her voice dropping an octave. I was worried that exposing them might be too cruel. But now, I don't feel a thing. They aren't just breaking vows, they are breaking the law. We took the files. We didn't confront them. We didn't say a word. We simply added this explosive evidence to our arsenal. We now had what lawyers call a smoking gun. And we were going to pull the trigger in front of everyone they tried to impress. They say that shared trauma is the fastest way to bond with someone. I never believed it until I met Veronica. Over those few weeks, what started as a tactical partnership turned into the only lifeline I had. We were meeting to coordinate the destruction of our marriages, but a weird irony started to happen. I was enjoying her company more than I had enjoyed my wife's in years. Sarah was always frantic, always checking her phone, always performing. Veronica was real. She was grounded. Our strategy meetings started dragging on. We'd finish reviewing legal documents and instead of leaving, we'd order another round of coffee. We started talking about things that had nothing to do with Brad or Sarah. I learned she loved old jazz records and hated modern art. She learned that I dreamed of designing sustainable housing, not just the corporate skyscrapers I was paid to build. One rainy afternoon, we were sitting in her car, watching the rain hit the windshield. The silence wasn't awkward, it was comfortable. "You know," she said softly, staring out at the gray street. "Brad never asks me about my day. He only asks about the bank accounts. When was the last time Sarah asked you what you wanted?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't remember. I looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath that armor of high society elegance, she was just a woman who wanted to be seen. And I realized, with a sudden jolt of guilt and clarity, that I wasn't just doing this for revenge anymore. I was doing it for her. There was a moment, just a split second, where the air in the car felt electric. She turned to me, her blue eyes searching mine, and I saw a flicker of something that wasn't about anger or sadness. It was hope. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to tell her that maybe, just maybe, the wrong people had married each other. But I pulled back. We both did. We were soldiers on a mission, and we couldn't afford to get distracted. "Eyes on the prize, Ethan," she whispered, though her voice lacked its usual bite. "Eyes on the prize," I repeated. We didn't cross the line. We didn't kiss. But as I walked back to my subway stop that day, I knew one thing for sure. Losing Sarah wasn't going to be a tragedy. Losing the chance to know Veronica, that would be the real loss. Friday afternoon. The drive out to the Hamptons takes about 3 hours from the city, but that car ride felt like an eternity. Sarah was chatting happily about the weekend, totally oblivious to the fact that I wasn't listening to a word she said. I was too busy mentally preparing myself for the performance of a lifetime. When we pulled into the driveway of Brad and Veronica's estate, my jaw actually clenched. It wasn't a house, it was a fortress of wealth. Manicured lawns, a fountain in the driveway, and the ocean shimmering in the background. It was beautiful, and it made me sick. This was the kingdom Brad built with Veronica's money. Money he was now using to romance my wife. Brad came out to greet us. Seeing him in person for the first time since the photos, that was the hardest test. He was tall, charming, with that fake, salesman smile plastered on his face. "You must be Ethan," he boomed, extending a hand. I looked at his hand. The hand that had been on my wife's face in those photos. I wanted to break his fingers. Instead, I gripped it firmly and smiled. "Great to meet you, Brad. Thanks for having us. And Sarah, wonderful to see you outside the office," he said, turning to her. I watched them. I watched the way their eyes lingered for a fraction of a second too long. I watched the subtle flush on Sarah's neck. To anyone else, it looked like a polite greeting between colleagues. But, to me, it was screamingly obvious. They thought they were being so subtle, so clever. Veronica appeared in the doorway a moment later. She looked breathtaking in a white summer dress, the picture of the perfect hostess. She greeted Sarah warmly, a masterclass in acting, and then turned to me. We shared a brief, polite nod. To the observer, we were strangers. But in that half-second of eye contact, a silent message was passed. Game on. The rest of the evening was a torture chamber. We sat on the patio, drinking expensive wine. I had to sit there and listen to Brad brag about his business, while Sarah laughed at all his unfunny jokes. I saw their feet brush against each other under the table. I saw Brad top off her glass a little too often. I played my part. I was the quiet, supportive husband, fading into the background. I let them feel safe. I let them get comfortable. Because I knew that the more comfortable they felt tonight, the more shocking the fall would be tomorrow. As I lay in the guest bed that night, listening to the ocean and Sarah's steady breathing beside me, I didn't sleep. I was counting the hours until the party. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the garden transformed into a sea of fairy lights and designer suits. It was the kind of party you see in movies, waiters circulating with trays of caviar, a live jazz band playing soft tunes, and the air thick with expensive perfume and fake laughter. I stood by the periphery, nursing a drink I hadn't taken a sip of in an hour. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my face remained a mask of polite disinterest. Across the lawn, I saw Sarah. She was beaming, networking, working the room like a pro. She looked happy. She had no idea that in about 10 minutes, her life as she knew it would cease to exist. At 9 p.m. sharp, the music faded. Veronica stepped onto the raised platform at the end of the garden. The spotlight hit her, and the crowd went silent. She looked absolutely radiant, yet terrifying. She tapped a spoon against her champagne flute. Ding, 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 the sound cutting through the night air like a blade. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice projecting clearly across the silent crowd. 10 years. It's a long time to build a life, isn't it? To build trust. To build an empire. The crowd murmured their approval. Brad stood at the front, chest puffed out, looking like the proudest man on earth. "Brad, darling, come up here," Veronica beckoned, smiling sweetly. Brad jogged up the steps, taking his place beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist. He looked the picture of the devoted husband. But Veronica wasn't done. "But tonight isn't just about us," she continued, her eyes scanning the crowd until they locked onto Sarah. "We have some new friends here tonight who remind me so much of passion. Sarah, Ethan, would you please join us on stage? I want to make a special toast to new connections." I saw Sarah freeze. This wasn't in the script. She looked at me, confused, panic flickering in her eyes for just a second. But the crowd was clapping. She had no choice. She put on her smile and walked up the stairs. I followed, heavy-footed, taking my place beside her. Now, the four of us stood there. The husband, the wife, the lover, and the mistress. A perfect square of deception standing under the spotlight. I wanted to show everyone exactly what these last 10 years, and specifically the last few months, have meant to us, Veronica said, her voice turning icy cold. She gestured to the massive projection screen set up behind us. "So, I prepared a little video montage. A tribute to loyalty." She looked at Brad. Then she looked at Sarah. "Lights, please." The massive screen behind us flickered to life. The crowd hushed, expecting a slideshow of wedding photos set to a romantic ballad. What they got was a grainy, high-definition video timestamped from 3 weeks ago. It was the interior of a luxury hotel suite. Brad was there. Sarah was there. And they weren't discussing business. A collective gasp ripped through the audience. It was a sound I'll never forget, the sound of 300 wealthy socialites simultaneously realizing they were witnessing a train wreck. On screen, Sarah was laughing, holding a glass of champagne. Then, the audio kicked in. It was crystal clear, amplified by the concert-grade speakers. "God, he's so boring," Sarah's voice boomed across the garden. He has no ambition. Unlike you, Brad. Veronica is just as bad," Brad's voice replied on the recording. "She thinks she runs the company, but she's just a checkbook. Once I secure this next transfer, I'm done with her." The silence in the garden was absolute. It was deafening. Beside me, I felt Sarah's knees buckle. She let out a strangled sound, like she couldn't breathe. Her face had drained of all color, turning a sickly shade of gray. Brad, on the other hand, panicked. "Turn it off," he screamed, his charming facade shattering instantly. He lunged toward the AV technician's booth. "Cut the feed. Now." But the technician didn't move. He had been paid by Veronica too. The images kept cycling. Screenshots of the bank transfers. The flight logs. The texts calling their spouses idiots and obstacles. It was a montage of their cruelty, playing on a 20-foot screen. Veronica didn't flinch. She simply raised her microphone again. Her voice was calm, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Surprise," she said deadpan. Brad spun around, his face red with rage and humiliation. "Veronica, you crazy B***TCH. What is this?" "This," Veronica said, gesturing to the screen where a spreadsheet of the embezzled funds was now displayed, "is evidence. My lawyers are currently handing the physical copies to the district attorney. Oh, and Brad. The security guards at the gate have been instructed to escort you off the property. You don't live here anymore. She turned to Sarah, who was trembling, tears finally streaming down her face. Not tears of remorse, but tears of a narcissist caught in the act. And Sarah, Veronica added, looking at my wife with pure pity. Ethan has already moved your things to a storage unit in Queens. I believe the key is in the mail. The crowd didn't know whether to applaud or run. It was brutal. It was public. And it was absolutely perfect. We didn't stay to watch the fallout. While Brad was screaming at security and Sarah was sobbing into her hands, Veronica and I simply walked off the stage, down the back steps, and into a waiting car. We didn't look back. As we drove away from the estate, leaving the chaos behind us, the silence in the car wasn't tense anymore. It was the silence of pure relief. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal justice. It turns out, when you have video evidence of embezzlement and a confessions on tape, the courts move pretty fast. Brad is currently serving 3 to 5 years for corporate fraud. Sarah. Well, the scandal was too much for her firm. She was let go for conduct unbecoming, and last I heard, she's living in a studio apartment in New Jersey, blaming everyone but herself. They turned on each other instantly, just like we knew they would. But that's not the part of the story I care about anymore. Cut to 6 months later. I'm sitting at a small round table outside a café in Le Marais, Paris. The autumn air is crisp, and the city smells like rain and fresh bread. I'm sketching again, not corporate office blocks, but a small, sustainable library design I've wanted to do for years. I'm free. A shadow falls over my table. I look up, and there she is. Veronica. She looks different. Younger. The heavy armor of the trophy wife is gone. She's wearing a simple trench coat, her hair loose, smiling a real, genuine smile that reaches her eyes. She isn't my partner in crime anymore. She isn't my ally in a war. Is this seat taken? She asks, echoing the first words she ever said to me at the plaza. I smile, closing my sketchbook. I was saving it for a friend. She sits down, and the waiter brings 2 glasses of wine without us asking. We don't talk about Brad. We don't talk about Sarah. Those names belong to a past life. To the future? She asks, raising her glass. To the future, I reply. We clink glasses. The nightmare is over. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. A lot of people ask me, Ethan, how can you trust Veronica? You met her because your spouses were cheating. Aren't you afraid history will repeat itself? It's a fair question. But here is the truth. Last week, Veronica left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while she went to the market. I didn't even look at it. I didn't feel that urge, that sickness in my stomach, or that need to hunt for lies. We started our own boutique design firm here in Europe. We build things on strong foundations, literally and metaphorically. We don't have a perfect marriage like Brad and Sarah pretended to have for the cameras. We have something better. We have the truth. Brad sends me emails sometimes from prison, begging for character references for his parole hearing. I delete them without reading. Sarah tries to add me on social media every few months under fake names. I just block and move on. The best revenge wasn't the public humiliation. It wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't even taking their money. The best revenge was realizing that I didn't need them to be happy. I just needed to respect myself enough to walk away. We went through hell to find each other, but looking at the life we have now, I'd say it was worth the ticket. And that is the end of Ethan and Veronica's story. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes, when things fall apart, they are actually falling into place. Thank you so much for watching this episode on Inspiration Seeker. If this story made you cheer, cry, or just feel satisfied seeing justice served, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets us bring you more amazing stories like this one. Question of the day. Do you think Ethan and Veronica were right to plot their revenge, or should they have just walked away immediately? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments section below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a upload. Remember, you deserve to be someone's priority, not their option. I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired.